This is the Elura Code, a transmission for creators, sensitives, and visionaries who know they're built for more, who can feel the signal beneath the noise. Here we decode the hidden patterns running your life, the ones shaping your wealth, your relationships, your body, your art. It blends human design, field energetics, ancient tech, and quantum energetic architecture to recalibrate your system back to truth. You will learn to tune into your body, recognize what truth feels like, and use that as your guidance. This is a multidimensional approach to allow the whole of your being to come together in a convergence of self-discovery and alignment so that you may begin live from full alignment and press play on life. This isn't self-help, it's self-remembrance. Each episode is a map, a key, a mirror. If you dare to meet the real you beneath the programming, welcome home to the Elura Code.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Elura Code podcast. I am extremely excited for this conversation. My guest today is Stephanie Jala. She is the creator and the visionary behind it's called A Mother's Movement. And basically what she's doing is looking to have those remember the spark of the divine feminine essence through a matriarchal approach. And this is also kind of mixed into the larger piece, which is for those, sovereigns, visionaries, neurodivergents, seekers who are looking to transcend the third dimensional reality and bring it into a what some would call, or what could be referred to as, the new earth, which is basically, it's just anchoring a higher dimensional frequency in the third dimension. So without ado, Steph, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Rob.
Oh, it's an absolute honor and a pleasure. And it's been, I love the conversations that we've had in the past, and it's been a while. So,
It's been a while.
Yeah, and actually there was only like, when I first started this, there was only like 3 or 4 people that immediately came to mind to actually be on the podcast, and obviously, and you were one of them. So anyway, here we are.
I feel honored. Thank you.
No worries. So maybe what we can do to start off with is just for the viewers and listeners, maybe just talk a little bit about your story, what you're doing now with the Mother's Movement, with the larger piece, with the sovereignty piece, because it all really kind of, in a way, it all kind of goes together.
It does. I mean, we all have our gifts and our part. And, in this lifetime, I came here to learn how to be a woman. And, I'm very connected. I can channel, and I was meditating and I was channeling, and I was being shown this ship, right? A craft that I was in before this lifetime, where I was training. And I saw my friend in the craft, and he was like in the laboratory with like plants and measuring the consciousness of plants from different dimensions that were higher frequency, dimensions that were war torn. And he was learning about the consciousness through plants. And I was like, you have such a cool soul mission on earth. Like, I wish I had that. All I have to do is come to earth and learn how to be a woman. Like, that's so boring and basic. And then I came here and I was like, damn, being a woman is like hard. And then, going through, these soul initiations, these dark nights of the soul, a lot of the work that women have to do is releasing a lot of pain with the masculine, forgiveness of the masculine, and then the reclamation of the power and the magic of the feminine. And when you start seeing how important we all are in our own, essence, woman and man, masculine and feminine, however you identify, you realize how important it is and how much the world has been yearning for and missing the divine feminine in its expression, in its fullest radiance. And you can see that as a reflection of Mother Earth, right? You know, Mother Earth is the feminine, and she's the giver of life. She bears the fruit of life. And when we forget to revere her, you know, we use her, we take from her, the planet suffers. And so my mission really is to have the women really do that deep inner healing with their feminine and start being back in union and unity with the masculine, so that we can come back into holy harmony and restore the matriarchy and patriarchy in its divine form. And we all know that if we want to enact change in the outer world, first we have to do that in our inner worlds, because it always comes from inside. And so this is the process. And this is why we're seeing this mass explosion of life coaches, spiritual coaches, and people are, you know, dogging it a bit. But this is a good thing, because it's showing that finally humanity is going through this rapid transformation and evolution, letting go of our dense energy of pain and fear and rising into who we truly are meant to be more and more. And as we do that, we're going to start seeing the shifts of new food systems, new education systems, new healthcare systems, new financial systems that are rooted in benevolence, that are rooted in body, mind, spirit well-being, that are rooted in having us remember and train our superpowers and open up our true gifts and higher potentials, so that we can create in more harmony and love. So that's just a little bit about me.
Perfect. Couldn't have been said. Couldn't have been said. I mean, I think you pretty much covered it all. So, and you know what? I think it's interesting because, so in my social media on different platforms, like I have it customized for a certain purpose. So like Instagram is all about like the inspiration piece, you know, so like, you know, I follow people like Eckhart Tolle and others, and, you know, like AI designs of really cool real estate, stuff like that. And then TikTok is more for the active engagement part. So I post the same content, but I've started doing lives on TikTok, interacting with other people, and starting to build some relationships. But Facebook is more for my own personal whatever, right? So like personal health, personal like dating, for example. And so there's a big movement there now where there's a lot of female dating advocates for men.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting perspective, because it flips the switch on what is very traditional in terms of expectations and all these kind of things, because it's dealing with stuff that is rampant right now. And what's interesting is that, but the focus is what they call good men, not these egotistical, you know, like dictator types who are, just for lack of a better word, complete buttholes, but like for like, honest, normal, everyday men who just want, they just want to, have their job, have their wife, have their kids, and just have a happy, peaceful existence. And the reason why the divorce rate is so high is because there's these themes that are coming from women, things like competition and constant critiquing, nagging, all these things. And the way that they kind of are designed, and this is exactly to what you're talking, this is why I'm bringing this up, is to what you're talking about, is in order for a woman to be in her divine feminine, the man or the masculine also has to be able to fulfill, their end or their part in the union. But when women are trying to control everything and be manipulate and bitchy and all these, and it's I'm not trying to isolate, and we might get some might get some things in the comments, but that's fine.
It's good to talk about.
It's and this is just, this is not my perspective per se. This is a movement that I'm seeing online, but I also think there's a lot of truth to it, because
There is.
because the majority of the people who are talking about this are women.
So, I think that it's important because it's very easy for women to fall into being the victim and then blaming men. And we did see, I think a lot of women in the past definitely carry a lot of sexual trauma, trauma, feeling like they had no power, no say. And so I think a lot of women tried to reclaim their power by being like men, because that was the only type of leadership that they were shown. So I want to be the boss. I want to dominate in the corporate world. I want to crush it, making money and hustling like a man, because that's what we were shown. But the divine feminine was so forgotten that we didn't know actually how to see her in feminine leadership. But to go back to the reason why women control is because there actually is this deep root of fear and distrust. And because they don't trust the masculine, and they have fear that the masculine either won't deliver or will harm them somehow and destabilize their safety. They don't surrender to the masculine because they don't trust them. So this has been a really big process to start opening our hearts and trusting in men again, and trusting in men's leadership again, so that we can actually just be the receivers, because women are meant to receive. The feminine is to receive. But if we are to give, where we give is we give through our hearts, right? So, that's why the woman has breasts. We breastfeed the world. That's how we nurture. We give through nurturing with love. And the man gives by being the protector and the provider. But we're going through this really interesting change. It's a really interesting time in life, because we've also been programmed to be slaves for centuries and eons. So if men really want to rise in their providership, we also have to do all this work around releasing our slave trauma and scarcity mindset, but it has to be done on both sides. So there's a lot of dynamics at play. There's a lot.
Absolutely. And without that structure, it's a lot harder for women to rise up in a way that's natural for them. Now, I do want to add something else, because now everyone has their own unique design. And it's interesting because a lot of women actually have more masculine traits, but they're done in a feminine way. It's a very interesting piece of the conversation. So, because part of what I do is when I'm working with people is, I pull their blueprint, and when we can actually, but I've also been able to extrapolate some unique ways of doing things with it, to achieve, because you don't need, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent just yet, but you don't need to cover every little detail, and especially in the beginning, you just want to focus on really the foundational pieces, at least in the work that I'm doing, because I'm more interested in working with the field, with somebody's field, and that interacts with the field at large, because that's kind of the root of of being and creation itself, because really we're just extensions of source energy. When you actually understand. So for me, for example, I'm 65 feminine and about 65 35. Feminine to masculine. So it's actually quite a different. I can't remember what yours is. I'd have to pull it up again and have a look. And there are different ways that this gets expressed, because just because the ratios, again, I'll use myself as an example. Just because the ratios are what they are doesn't mean that I'm a divine feminine. Right. So
how
it's
would you leverage your natural blueprint expressed as a man?
So because of so, again, just for the simplicity of this, because I can go so much deeper in a session, but so there's two sides. You have the personality and you have the design. So for me, the majority of my definition is in the personality. My design is completely wide open. So this is why I feel what I feel. This is why I am so freaking sensitive. This is why why boundaries are so are fundamental. This is why I am so susceptible to astrology. And funny, we were talking about this, me and Krista, the girl I interviewed last night, we were talking about this, and she was, it was kind of an interesting perspective, just by virtue of the fact. So all that openness, it makes space for all these feminine gates that are in my chart.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And what it's called in real life, it's called being neurodivergent. But I have learned over time, I have developed habits. Like, for example, like whenever I notice when I go unconscious and I start to spin, I can catch myself pretty quick. And there's an automatic awareness piece now that kicks in to feel. So I can feel the energy in my body, and it depends on how strong it is, but usually it's able to, to dissipate in just a matter of a few seconds. So, and you have to have this kind of awareness, when you're that open, because you've got all these energies coming at you all the time, and you don't have an established set of readily available traits. Because even almost half of my gates in my chart are what are called hanging gates, which means they're not tied to a defined center. So it means that I have to rely on either, consciously creating it, or somebody in my periphery who has that gate or the other half of it for me to activate it, or a transit.
So it's interesting because it feels like you and me were mirrors, because in a way, and I think maybe we talked about this before, I feel like I was born with a lot of masculine energy. And I know in past lives, I was like kings, I was a warrior, I was army generals, and I did a lot of masculine type of leadership roles in my past lives. And that's why I had to come here as a woman this lifetime to experience the other side and soften myself. And I really had to learn to be a woman. Like I even embody that woman energy until maybe just 3 years ago when I was 40 years old.
Yeah.
Before that, I was still in my wounded little girl or my wounded masculine, survival masculine, trying to prove myself to the world. And so I had to really cultivate this feminine energy in me because I have a lot of strong masculine leadership. And now I'm standing for feminine leadership, but it really is so that we have that inner union and inner balance. So what do you think about, can people shift their blueprint?
No, it's just learning to work with the energies.
Yeah.
Because so left brain masculine, right brain feminine.
Yeah.
And if you're stuck in one more than the other, and this is where being identified with your mind is the problem. So when we learn how to transcend that, and we learn to recognize this, now we're connected to source, and now we can consciously understand it. But here's the thing, Steph, is that masculine and feminine are not separate.
Right. They're intertwined.
No, exactly, because there's going to be a little bit of one and the other, because it's necessary. If they were two separate things, we'd be screwed. Not as screwed as we are right now. We'd be more screwed, because there would be no way to go from one or to as they say in French, mélange les deux, which means mix the two.
Yeah.
So something that I have, and it's actually in part of my offering. So first of all, you have to be able to identify with what energy you're in. From a wounded perspective, because you could be in masculine energy, and you could be in fearless leadership mode, And that's where you need to be at that particular time for whatever you're doing. But if you get into this, and this is where most people live, who are in the masculine vibe, is it comes across as, so I mean, if you use sales as an example, it comes across as pushy. It comes across as not listening. It comes across as, my agenda is the key. It comes across as like a pushy dictator asshole.
Right.
And nobody in their right mind really wants to do business with a person like that. Now, on the flip side, the wounded feminine, as you can relate, they feel powerless. They feel like a victim. They feel, and a lot of this comes from, in modern, kind of reverting back to what I was talking about regarding this split in when women say, well, where are all the good men? Well, they're either at home, married, or in relationships, and they're with somebody who appreciates their who they are. So there's this victim side that, and a lot of it comes from entitlement. There's a huge sense of it, and I'm not saying it's just women. Don't get me wrong on that, because it happens to men too, and they are it's those kind of men that treat women like shit, right? And trust me, I see it every day in the business that I'm in, right? And I've had so the idea is to really identify, to be able to recognize and be aware of what kind of energy is happening in your body, and then being able to shift, right? Yeah. And one of the easiest ways to do that, and this is a practice. Now, did I ever tell you about polarity breathing?
Yes, we did practice it a little bit, but can you demonstrate it again? Because I really loved it. I'd love a refresher, and I'm sure your viewers would.
Okay, so this is a great way to begin the process of the shift, because now it depends. So I'm going to give a couple of nuances here. So if somebody is really activated masculine, like angry, trying to go right into feminine is not healthy, because it's right. So which leads to another point. Our bodies are already equipped to be able to do this. We just have to fucking let them, right? So, but in a healthy way. So, okay. So let's say that I've just gotten really angry, and I've done something to regulate it to a point where, like, I can still feel it in my body, but it's starting to settle. Okay. Yeah. So this is now where I'm going to introduce it. And so all we're going to do is you're going to take a deep breath in through the nose, slow, like say to a count of 4, and then out to a count of 7. And then you're going to pause for a count of 4. And then you're going to do it again.
How are we supposed to hold it up here?
No, release it. Yeah. Inhale.
So in for 4, hold at the top.
Out. No. Hold it. In for 4.
Out for 7.
Out, and then hold.
Hold on the exhale and repeat.
Yeah. So it shouldn't be it shouldn't be a hold at the bottom. It should be a pause, because you're not holding anything, because the lungs are empty.
Yes.
Yeah. So 2 things are happening. By breathing in that rhythm, you are cultivating the feminine polarity, or the negative polarity in the body. And so what this means is it's producing negative ions. And if you know anything about that, it is absolutely vital to health. It helps with it helps with the receptivity of cell activity. It helps with the eradication of the free radicals, and like a gazillion other things.
Yeah.
So, right. And then
I've heard it even activates stem cell growth.
uh
I've heard breath holds at least.
oh yes. So breath holds, that's, if you do a bunch of deep breathing and then you hold for at least 60 seconds. Yes. Yeah. And that's even part of the Wim Hof stuff, but that's for another day.
Got it.
So the other thing is, as soon as you start to do that, it starts to, you're sending a message to the body to say that you're safe, and it activates the parasympathetic nervous system.
Right.
Right.
So you get your nervous system into a grounded state. So breathing in for 4 seconds, breathing out for 7, and then a pause for 4, breathing, and then repeating until how long would you do this cycle for? And tell me how this recalibrates your polarity.
Okay, so I'm still a bit fuzzy on how it actually it has to do with about releasing pressure. Yeah. Because when you're exhaling and then you're paused, it's like a release of pressure. Yeah. Right? Because when we do the masculine, you'll see the difference. Okay. So it's like
breathing.
Right. So that's negative breathing. Okay. Negative, feminine, yin, all the same thing.
Yes. Okay? And we're not saying negative as in bad. We're saying negative as in positive is penetrative force. Negative is receiving force. So the positive inserts into the negative. So negative is meaning the receptivity of
it. So it creates a feedback loop.
Okay.
Right.
So what's the masculine breathing?
It's the exact opposite. So now you're going to breathe in, and now you're going to hold. And this is where you're creating the pressure because you're holding. And then out.
Exhale.
And then there's no pause at the bottom, maybe like for half a second. And you're going to go to capacity. And so you notice when I'm talking, like there's a pressure build. Right.
Okay, so that's when you want to cultivate more masculine energy. You start with the breathing in and you hold up within. And if you want to cultivate more feminine energy, you breathe out and exhale. And it reminds me of the feminine where we can just exhale and relax, exhale and relax, exhale and relax. And it's so, I've only ever really experienced being in my feminine in a relationship once, and it was 2 years ago. And I had no idea I could be that happy. I had no idea I could be that feminine and feel so taken care of. I had no idea. I was just really, it was a surprise to me. And that was when I first really discovered my womanhood. And I had done a lot of subconscious reprogramming. And I also have this in my course, Healing with the Feminine and Rising as the Matriarch, where we look at the wounded feminine and the wounded masculine traits and look at which characteristics have we been embodying and how can we clear those ways of being from our field and then start repatterning into the divine versions of feminine and masculine. And then what is it? Yeah.
So it's not even about for me now, it's not even about clearing because there's nothing to clear. Right. Because the energy is trapped. It's trapped in behavioral patterns. It's trapped in beliefs. It's trapped in all this mumbo jumbo. But as soon as
patterns, even
so when we bring awareness to it, I mean that in and of itself is enough to get the energy moving, because you're now, and this is the epitome of feminizing. It's because you are allowing yourself to feel what is there. And that's all you have to do. No judgment, no frickin', it's like, oh, what's going on? Oh, my foot's tingling. Oh, cool. But if there's actually like a discomfort, an uncomfortable feeling that's attached to like worry, worry actually doesn't feel all that, once you become conscious of it and you allow it to be there and move, it actually doesn't feel that bad.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
you could deal with worry. And I'm not much of a
Just as an example. Yeah. Yeah.
as an
Because that,
example.
so, yeah. So it's because once you actually learn to feel into it, then it automatically starts to transmute itself.
So I'd love, because
Now,
you brought up awareness, right? You said once you are aware of it, then you can actually transmute it because you're aware of it. Before it was in your
mm,
blind spot, you were not aware of it. And I would love
mm,
to share some things that have come into my awareness as a woman, because I know some people in the audience will resonate and be like, "Oh, I didn't even know I had that, but now that I think about it, you brought that to my awareness." And I'd love to hear what men have in their blind spots that they want to transmute, so that we can all be now embodying the divine feminine or masculine qualities instead of the wounded ones. So for me, for
mm.
example, I did not have the awareness that in my programming, my mind was telling me that all men cause wars. And that was really running in my subconscious, because when I grew up, I saw all these wars happening, all these children dying, and people suffering. And I was like, well, who made those decisions to drop those bombs? A man did, because in my mind I had the image of a commander who was a man. And then I had made that decision, that postulate that men cause wars. And so therefore, I was attracting men that were causing wars in my home, men
Oh,
that were
wow.
harming my children in my home. And I had no idea that that belief had permeated my reality in such a pervasive way. And when I stepped back and went, wow, okay, all men don't cause wars. Most men don't want wars. They don't want to see their children dying or suffering. It's only like a man that's making that decision, which is a very, very small 1% of the global elite class that controls this earth slave colony that we basically live in, that we are now freeing ourselves from. So I had to repattern that from men cause wars, that men are dangerous, that men are angry, that men will hurt you, that men will rape you. And I had to remove that from my psyche to men are safe, men are noble, men are peacemakers, men are valiant, men are, that I'm safe with men, that love is safe, that love is not war, that love is peace. And that was a really big shift for me, to go from my survival wounded masculine and wounded feminine into my divine masculine and divine feminine expression.
Hmm. Wow.
So
That's quite,
it's really deep, and it goes so much deeper, especially for women, because we think that we're valued only for our beauty. Yet I didn't feel safe to be beautiful, because if I was too beautiful, I'd be raped. And that was it was not in the forefront of my mind. It was a blind spot in my subconscious programming, that if I was too beautiful, I'd be raped. But if I wasn't pretty enough, I wouldn't be chosen. And if I
mm,
was too skinny, then I would die of famine. But if I was too fat, then I wouldn't be provided for, and then I'd be unsafe because I wouldn't have a man to take care of me and my kids. So there's
mm,
so many things going on that we have to deprogram ourselves from, to come into our wholeness, feel safe in our beauty. And then also, once I embodied feeling safe to be beautiful, it was like feminine radiance was able to just open up and shine for me. And I was like, it became a magnetically radiant woman. And for the first time in my life, after 40 years of being on this earth, I had never, ever had a man ever compliment me on my beauty, because I was vibrating, it's not safe to be beautiful.
oh,
So
really?
for the first time
Really?
when I was 41 years old, a man said, "You are absolutely gorgeous." And I was like,
Huh.
wow, you're the first man that has ever said that to me my whole entire life.
Huh.
That shocks people.
That's that's hard to believe, but
It's true.
it's
But
obviously
it was,
it's obviously true. Yeah. So
and I want to hear, like, what are some of these things that you've brought into your awareness as a man that's shifting, because I feel like we're kind of at this really weird dating hiatus. Like I've done so much work in love and men and money, and to really like feel really whole and complete and solid in myself, to open my heart after two major, divorces, with two children involved, with, my latest one involved, a lot of domestic violence and towards my child. And I had to really get responsible about what am I vibrating in my DNA that's attracting this, and have that as my catalyst for transformation. So I would love to know, on the masculine side, where are you guys at? Because I'm feeling that and maybe this isn't the case for you, because I know that you've been very connected, and you've always been a feeler and an empath and sensitive to energies. But naturally, women are more sensitive to energies naturally, in general, not everybody. But it seems like in the last 10, 20 years, women kind of have been healing and leading the spiritual movement. And I used to go to these spiritual events. It used to be all women. But now in the last 5 years, I've seen a shift where it actually started to be more 50-50. Men started coming in, more 50-50 women and men in these spiritual spaces. And then a couple of years back, I hosted a circle, and there were more men than women that showed up. And
Well,
this
it's
was about
interesting that
union.
it's so interesting that you say that. So just before I get into it, I just want to offer this. So I go to a CrossFit gym,
Mhm.
and they do CrossFit and they do powerlifting. So I was in class on Tuesday, and there was 13 people in class, 5 of which were guys and 8 of which were women.
Mhm.
Powerlifting. Yeah. And it's consistently at least half, if not more, ladies in the powerlifting class. It's
Wow.
crazy. Yeah.
And
Powerlifting.
would you say that's like a pretty manly type of like class?
Well, I mean, you're
weightlifting.
powerlifting.
Yeah.
You're doing there's only really 3 lifts. You do deadlifts, bench press, and squats.
Yeah.
And and it's mostly, and it's like probably 55 on average, 55% women. And I just think it's amazing, right? Because women are feeling safe enough to be interacting with the guys,
Uh-huh.
right?
Mhm.
And doing these things. And it's the same with the CrossFit. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things, about CrossFit though is it's likely the only sport that has, from its inception, has grown with the, to be completely inclusive. And the truth is that in many ways the women are more celebrated than the guys, right? Except for maybe when it comes to the weightlifting, and to see a guy move 3, 4, 500 pounds, it's just, that's just the difference between men and women. Is men typically are physically stronger and they can do that. Yeah. But at the same time, to see women move 350 pounds, it's just like, you've got to be. I know, right? So there's this really interesting. So now, to get back to what you were saying, so I would argue that a lot of that stuff that you've had to work through, I would almost go to say that and a lot of it's probably ancestral.
100%. Past life and ancestral fully. It was not from me from this lifetime mostly.
Yeah.
I have experienced some sexual trauma, some rape, like general womanizing and stuff like that with men, but it was absolutely ancestral and past life. I could tell you about some past lives, but yeah.
Oh, and yeah. So I feel like on the guy's side, it's like the same thing, because and again, we're just calling a spade. Like, you're going to see these. So one of the differences between guys and women these days, and I think it's just a thing, is that typically, and I'm talking, about the quote unquote good men, whatever that means to somebody, is, and I can relate to this in my own experience too, is that guys will typically fight for the relationship, whereas women you know, they tend to check out well in advance, and then when they do end it, the guy's completely blindsided. So I think that is part of it. I'm not saying all women are like that, but that is kind of the trend. And because oftentimes, and this is women are by far way more connected to their emotions. And so if they're in that wounded feminine space, then it's very likely that, you know, they are going to be pointing the finger to outside circumstances,
For sure.
as you know, and they're gonna point to their partner and say, it's your responsibility to make me happy.
Well, I
And
can relate to that for sure.
okay.
I can relate to that because in my last relationship, it was way more obvious to blame the man because his behaviors were uh, going to drugs and having psychotic episodes that would be violent outbursts on my child. So it was very much obvious to blame him. But what was unbeknownst to me was that in my DNA, in my vibration, I was carrying the wounded reflection of that experience as a woman. That
And the
all my
expression.
in the expression, but it wasn't obvious to me because I had never been in a toxic relationship like that. I was like, no, even though my last marriage didn't work out, it was still a fairly happy, normal relationship. And so this really blindsided me. So, I think people have to take responsibility, not by saying, oh, it's my fault or I did this, is that take responsibility for inheriting 7 generations back from your mother line and your father line and all your past lives and looking at, well, what is there and what can I transmute and what's the empowered version of what I want in a relationship?
Well, this is just it, and this goes far beyond relationships, but typically those who are more attracted to this path are those who are connected to higher degrees of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, this might not be a popular opinion, but I'm firmly of the belief that it's like, for starters, I don't think anything is random, like not even freaking
Yeah,
close.
for
It's
sure.
it's way too, like, I mean, you just look at the natural world and like,
Divinely planned.
and it's just like, come on, like this is insane. Look at the human body and what it does. Like, it's just like, you can't make this shit up. So
It's like a whole universe inside our bodies.
yeah,
So beyond intelligent. It's like we don't even deserve how intelligent our bodies are, but we're
we
starting to
know.
remember and start revering it and then
Well, yeah.
revering ourselves as conscious creators.
Well, and yeah, so that's the first piece. But it's like, you know, it's like this, you know, there is a plan, and we have the ability to navigate our own plan in kind of the way we want it, but we're naturally gifted with, you know, with gates, with gifts and talents and so on, and interests and stuff that's embedded energetically prior to coming in. And you know, it could be expressed. We get the choice of how it gets expressed.
Exactly.
But there are going to be themes that are going to be constantly running for, in some cases, years. So I pulled up my astrology about a month ago, and I did it from about 1990, no, from about 2005 to the present. So basically the last 20 years. And I had these two really long transits, one of which was like 18 years. And it's actually still going on. It'll be over next year. But I can't remember all the details, but it was all about upheaval. So 18 years or 20 years of fucking upheaval. Yeah.
I know. It feels
yeah.
like There's more.
and it
Wait, there's
and it oh yeah. It culminated in it culminated in 2015. So I had a nice little window there of like 3 years where I got a break and I was actually able to experience some flow and some success and blah blah blah. And but then in 2015, I went straight back into chaos. And then 2018, 19 was great, and then 2020 straight back into chaos. And like I'm at the point now where the chaos is very minimal, and there's reasons for that. But the astrology, I mean, I'm taking responsibility for what I need to do, but the astrology is also starting to shift in my favor. So anyway, getting back to this, the people that like us who come in with these things, it's the old saying, the greater the challenge, the greater the reward.
Yes.
And so that's why we have these really tough challenges to deal with, because well, it's more than that. It's destiny. It's what we're but it's what we're meant to do with that intel and that data once everything is in place, right? Yeah. And when you get into when you get into a lot of the higher element stuff, like especially like with I'd have to look at your chart, but probably your next big astrological event will be your Uranus opposition, which for me came in when it was 2018, so I was like around 43, something like that. And Uranus opposition for me turned out to be fantastic. Like it went from like it was like I can't even begin to explain the polarity difference. I went from like heartbreak and humiliation and just like complete like financial fucking ruin to like being like like being able to just like snap my fingers and poof, bags of cash were showing up, like just feeling good and just like just being in in a in the simplest version. I did a ton of fucking energy work that year.
Yeah.
I probably spent like $2,000 just on energy sessions with this lady. And she was able to really clean things up, and it made it a lot easier to receive and create.
Yeah. Powerful.
So the whole point being is that we're given these opportunities, and like we already have everything in our toolbox to be able to deal with it. It's just a lot of times people can't get past that victim, either the playing victim, and I often notice too that there's this interplay between victim and anger, like this victim perpetrator kind of thing, and it just kind of but then you can take that anger, and if you can transmute it enough, like I mean, for creating, that is massive power.
It's massive. So, I also feel like sometimes we have to go through that contrast, because when you really, really, really know what you don't want, then you can use that energy to focus on what you really, really, really want. And, one of my greatest desires is to just be in love. Like, I'm just such a loving person. And I was like, why is love so hard? Like, why is it so hard? And I had to, when I really psychically felt into the rage that I had with the masculine, I had to get real and be like, with this rage here, how could I ever invite love in? And I had to pull out the deepest amount of rage and victimhood that I had towards the masculine, which is really what I had towards myself. Because in a past life, when I did this energy clearing with love, with one of our common mentors where we met, I saw a past life where I was an army general, and I commanded my whole army to rape and execute millions of women all across Asia and Mongolia.
Oh my God.
And I was responsible. I commanded that command. And I did the same. I raped and I executed thousands of women. And so we go through these lifetimes and then we have to repair our karma. So that's why I came here to be a woman. I had to experience the receiving end of it. Just not even like all of it, just a bit of it. I had to experience the receiving end of being in that pain to say, I will never, ever let this happen to another woman again. And I will stand in my divine masculine and my divine feminine to restore that love, peace, safety, and harmony.
Well, yeah, because the masculine creates the container, and for the feminine to flourish, and then it's broadcast out into the world. But at the same time, it creates it's a feedback loop in your field. And what happens is, so I mean, if you look at this from the standpoint of the electron, so when we're in coherence, the electrical patterning or the electrical messaging in our body is coherent, right? But when it gets distorted, and there's a million different ways that can happen, the patterning in the coherence changes, and it becomes lopsided, or it becomes distorted, or it becomes like, you go into beta state, which is a state of brainwaves where basically you're freaking scrambled eggs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're
fight or flight, scarcity, survival, poverty. Yeah.
Well, it's chronic fight or flight. It's chronic.
Yeah.
And the reason why that happens so much is, again, we get trapped in these loops, thinking like, a lot of it has to do with energy management as well, because the way the brain is designed is it's not designed in your best interest. It's designed for survival.
Yeah.
So if you're well fed, well rested, exercised, and in whatever your center is, then you don't have to worry about all that stuff. But it's when we get undernourished, and this is especially hard for those who are neurodivergent, because we're so freaking sensitive and susceptible, and our prefrontal cortex, where all the executive function is made, it half the time is starved of the one molecule that it needs in order to function, which is dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens when it's not functioning? We automatically go back into the more primitive centers of the brain, and that's why the addictions are harder. That's why the emotional regulation is harder. That is why communication is harder. That is why they procrastinate and all these things. So, but the addictive component is these urges, they're these urges to self-regulate, because they're looking for dopamine hits to bring things back into, but they're usually very unhealthy. So this is where the awareness piece comes in, because now you are connected to your field and the field at large, as opposed to, for lack of a better term, being stuck in the head. Right. So it now gives us the ability to move, to sync the hemispheres in the brain and to connect through our heart and start living and broadcasting, because the heart generation field is 60 times more powerful than the brain. And we actually have cerebral thinking capabilities in the heart. So it's like a 3-brain system. You have the brain, the heart, and the gut. So it's like this, this is where it gets processed, this is where it gets stored, and the gut is how it gets expressed. So if you can alter that feedback loop, and the first thing that I cover is, you have to figure out where they're at energetically, and you can tell that in many ways just by having a conversation with them. Then you have to teach them coherence. You have to give people skills in order to bring their body back to a state of coherence.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, the most important thing, and again, it's some people will not resonate with this because they don't speak this language, and that's just not the way they're wired. They may look at it through a lens of more of like a self-development thing, and like weightlifting, right? And that's their way to regulate, and that works for them. But this is more geared towards, for people like you and me who are on this path.
The inner
and we feel we have for me, it's like, I can't not do this, because when I don't, my world gets turned up. It's like totally topsy-turvy. So, and it's come to that point now, like especially the last 6 months. If I don't do this, it's right back in the chaos. And, I'm fucking done with that shit. I'm beyond done.
You deserve to be done with it, but it takes some muscle to start building that habit until your body is able to. Do you feel like your body will ever be able to just be in that homeostasis after or maintain, let's say?
I'm kind of there now. So I've got some things that have been an absolute massive game changer. But so the biggest piece is the awareness piece. And I'm not talking about, having a quick flash about, maybe I am angry right now. I'm talking about the being in the body, being connected with your energetic innards, or the inner energetic field in your body, because that is the field. Because the field moves in and out. Your head and your heart penetrate out, but it's really the entire body, because every single cell is like an individual. Think of a cell like an entity, or like a sovereign thing. And we've got about 37 trillion of them in our body. Each one of them contains 1.4 volts. So that's a lot of fucking creative power.
It is a lot of creative power.
Yeah. Rule numero uno is to learn to be in the body and being able to connect with the field, because that is where the work of transformation gets done.
So explain to me from your perspective, what does it mean to connect to the field? Because I have my own intuitive way that I connect to the field.
It's to be able to feel it.
Feel it. Okay, so just feeling.
Yes. I mean, that in the simplest term is to feel the animating presence in your body.
Okay. So can you walk me through an example? So when I teach my children, I just say, do you feel, I make it really simple for them to learn emotional intelligence. Do you feel thumbs up, or do you feel thumbs down? And I get them to close their eyes so that they can connect to their body and see how it feels in their body.
Yeah. And so so I'm connecting to myself right now, and it's most present in my quads, and it feels, there's a sense of cool, and it feels very like the actual bzzz, feels very coherent. Now, I've been doing a lot of, so I've recently, I started doing this thing intuitively, I don't know, like a year ago, and just every now and then I would do it. But I saw a video on the very topic the other day, and so now I've been doing it every day. And that is now you can do it with a tennis ball or is massaging your feet.
Yeah.
Because the sensation and the energy gets stored in our fascia, which is the connective tissue that holds the whole body together.
Okay.
And there are entrance points, and the biggest entrance point is in the feet. So now I've taken it, me being the mad scientist that I am, I've taken it a step further. I've got a freaking massage gun and I massage my feet and my lower, and oh my God, Steph, the release of energy I get is just, it's crazy.
You're answering a lot of questions here for me, because a year ago I did this really, really major clearing in love, because I had so much pain from my last relationship. I was like, I know I'm destined for divine union. I'm destined for soulmate love, because I know that it's going to be a superpower for the transformation and birthing the new earth. And
Okay.
after I did this energy clearing, like, it was so intense. I had all this pain. It started at the bottom of my feet. And on my right side, which is my masculine, I had numbness, like tingles and numbness all the way up my right side, down my right arm. I was numb to my ribs, and my whole right arm was numb. And I had sharp, excruciating pain coming up my right side of my lower back for about a year. And for almost a year, I could barely walk. I couldn't walk fast. I couldn't run. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't do any exercise, because all this pain from that I had with men was transmuting out of my fascia, and I could feel the root of it coming from my feet. It was crazy. And I'm finally, like, I still have numbness and tingles in my body right now, but it's not as severe as it used to be. But I'm like, that's heavy stuff. Like, we've been doing some heavy lifting this lifetime. And when you were talking about, when we're in that beta fighter, that chronic fight or flight, it's like our old earth is quite dysfunctional. It's not designed for us to thrive. And I believe that that's on purpose, because they want people to be controlled, asleep, and, just exist.
It's okay. So here's a higher perspective. Yes, it's by design, but it's not because of humans. It's because that's the way it's meant to be, in order for humanity to wake the fuck up.
It is for our expansion. Exactly.
It's
that pressure, that contraction, that challenge is for our expansion. So it is really for us. And so here's what you're saying, though, is that it's important, if we want to change the system, we want to change our reality, first we have to get into coherence within. So what you're speaking of, and why the inner work, the energy work, is so important, is because if we want to live in a harmonious, coherent world, we have to first create that harmony and coherence within. And so that's why we're coming here. We're here to align ourselves, or get into deeper alignment, because it's just a journey.
Yeah. So, but this goes far beyond feeling good, because feeling good is a good start, but then there comes a point where feeling good turns into spiritual bypassing, where
avoidance.
So,
Absolutely.
but what people don't understand is that when you consciously take responsibility for the way that you feel, even if you're feeling bad, it doesn't matter, because it's that conscious presence is where the creative power is. It doesn't matter in the emotion. It's just rocket fuel, right? I'll give you an example. So I saw this video the other day, and this guy he's out camping, and he's showing you how to filter water. So what he does is he takes 3 bottles, and he fills the first one with just like small rocks, and then the second one he fills with sand, and the third one he fills with ground up charcoal from the fire, right? And he strings them up, and then he takes his cup or his mug or whatever, and he goes basically to a fucking mud puddle, scoops at the water, and you look at it, it's all gross, filled with guck and shit and rocks and stuff. He pours it in, goes through the first phase, gets all the big stuff out, goes through the second phase, starts to grab all the other stuff, goes through the finer phase, and he catches it at the bottom. Like, it's still a bit, it's still off yellow a little bit, but it's 100 times cleaner than it was. And then so the final phase would be to boil it, so it's clean enough to drink. So my point is that there's this purification process that we go to, and it can be thought of as remembrance, because it's not that it's not there. It's just obscured by illusion, by all the illusions, like all these thoughts that are connected to nothing, or the ego per se, which is, it's literally everything in your that you can possibly think of, from your identity as a woman, your knowledge, your education, your this. Now, that's fine, but it's understanding that there is a deeper reality beyond that. And that's where we start to connect with that quote unquote feeling good perspective, and how we're then able to start to to direct energy for the purpose of creation or co-creation. Because the universe is like, now in the earlier understandings of quote unquote manifestation, it's shit. I just lost my train of thought. You know what? On that note, let's take a 2-minute break, because we're at an hour and 20 minutes already, and we've only got, because I got to go to the bathroom real bad.
Okay, pause.
Yeah.